enthusiasts of open source like you are in this room. But does openness really affect the satisfaction in the community? So if you're having a community of an open product and the company behind is giving out information, would that make the people in the community more satisfied? And the second question I asked, as I said, I'm looking at open hardware, was, are there any differences between software and hardware in this regard? So what about the relation between openness and satisfaction when you're looking at software and hardware? And I've also been looking at different aspects of openness and asked myself, well, okay, does it make any differences in that part? So what I've been doing, I conducted a survey in 20 open source communities, very big communities like OpenMoko, RepRap, One Laptop per Child, etc. I received 309 responses in the months September and October. So it's not too big, but it's enough for doing some reliable statistics. And now I want to show you the statistics. So what I learned from the results is that openness is important for the community, and it indeed shows a significant impact on developer satisfaction. But what I also found is that if I distinguish between software and hardware, then only openness of software is affecting the satisfaction, and the openness of the hardware does not have any impact on the satisfaction of the developers in the community. So why is that the case? Why do people ask for open hardware if it does not make them more satisfied if they'll get it? So I have one more thing I want to show you. I've been looking at different aspects of openness, and I distinguish between three parts here. So one is transparency. By transparency, I mean the availability and quality of information. Then I've been looking at accessibility, so the possibility to influence the development, and replicability, so the possibility for self-assembly of the product. And by doing the same analysis as before, I found out that only transparency and accessibility impact the satisfaction of the people in the community, but replicability does not have any impact. So it appears not to be important to the developers whether or not they can produce the product themselves if they want to. Well, I thought interesting results, and I hope that some of you have an opinion on this and come to me and talk about it, because I would really love to know why the results are telling me that hardware is not important at all, and that also the replicability, so the self-assembly of the product, is not important to the people. Thank you very much.
So, next on the list, Munich, the crypto stick.
Yeah, we will hear about the small USB stick, and yes. I think he was there.
I kind of remember that he wasn't, so...
Okay, maybe we fucked up this again. Yeah. So, let's continue.
Emrys.
Sai, are you ready?
Good. Hi, everyone. What I'm going to talk about is a proposal. It's just a proposal, though. There's no code behind this. It's just an idea that I had for how to do a new steganographic file system. So the problem is I really like current file systems that try to hide your data and try to encrypt your data and all that. I've got TrueCrypt on my laptop. It's cool. The problem is they're all kind of suspicious. They leave traces behind, or they want you to reserve a big chunk of your hard drive that if any auditor is looking at it will be glaringly obvious as maybe they can't prove that it's TrueCrypt because they don't have your key, but a 1 gigabyte file that has random data on your hard drive probably is TrueCrypt. The usual answer to this is that you use what's called rubber hose systems, where you have plausible deniability. You can open up your fake file system, it looks real, it has files in it, and then you really use your other one that you use with a different password. Problem is, you probably don't maintain it very well. And the cops know that maybe you have a second file system there, and they can just keep you in jail until you give up both of your passwords. And you can claim you only have one password or you forgot the other one or whatever, but it's not a good situation. So what I propose is a free space file system. Basically, the idea is all disks have free space, right? You have any perfectly normally formatted disk, it has free space that you're just not using. What we can do is write to that free space. We don't tell the host file system, of course, that we're doing this. We just secretly store data where it thinks nothing is being allocated. The benefits are that if no one notices that you have anything, then you don't need to deny anything. Another benefit is that just in the course of using the system, it'll get destroyed if you don't keep it up. So if you turn off your system and the user just downloads a big file, whatever, the free space will get moved around, will get allocated by the main system, by the host, and therefore it goes away. And you don't really have to use up the user's space because it's free, etc. And you don't need a complicated Linux volume manager or whatever. Those are cool, don't get me wrong, but you know, they're just kind of messy. If you want to be a black hat about it, you could install it on someone's computer without their knowledge. You could store your data there. You're not going to be using up their hard drive space. So normally if you have a bot on somebody's computer and you're storing, you know, 10 gigabytes of wares, then they're going to notice because you're taking up space on their hard drive and suddenly they don't have very much space left free. But if you do this, it won't. And suppose your internet connection to them gets cut off, they do a virus scan, whatever, you're not leaving cruft behind that'll get you caught and in jail. There are some drawbacks, of course. Because you have to sort of maintain it, you have some higher disk use when you shuffle chunks around so that they stay propagated. And unless you do something special, which I'll get to in a second, it's volatile because the disk is constantly assigning free space to a new file or moving stuff around or defragging or whatever. So this is actually a feature, not a bug, as far as I'm concerned. So, yes. There are ways you can address this. You can store stuff redundantly. You can just not rely on it as like a permanent store. You can treat it more as a caching system. And you can try to hook into the host a little bit more deeply to try to say, if you're going to allocate some space, try to avoid my, quote unquote, my chunks first, but then if you have to allocate them, go ahead. It has a few vulnerabilities. I think they're sort of inherent to having anything that's cryptographically stored on a file system, on a drive rather, but you know, you can't really get around it. So in summary, you have something that's not suspicious. Unless it's running, it's not detectable, and unless you keep it running, it'll wipe itself. It's compatible with a perfectly normal setup. You can have just 100% of the disk used by an NTFS file system, nothing suspicious, everything is accounted for, and if the host wants to use 100% of the drive, you can just let it use it. So if you're interested, let's talk. And that deck doesn't work until tomorrow because I haven't gotten a phone yet. And one plug, I have two other things. So tomorrow in that room, you can learn how to make a language, and we'll make one on the spot together. And on day 4, there is a meditation workshop, and get your inoculation against Scientology. Thank you very much. So this is one.
Okay, thanks, Sai. Next, we have a guest from Sweden. He's talking about, can I say fuck? Is this okay for you? Because
yes, you can say fuck.
Okay.
All right.
Because in his title, he didn't write it. So what the fuck is up with Sweden is the title. Again, I give you the keywords. It's hackerspaces, history, and Sweden. So tack så mycket and go on.
Thank you. Hello friends, I am Kuji, I'm from Sweden. I have a hackerspace in my local city called Forskningsavdelningen, or the Forsk. The Forsk, just say the Forsk, it's like a fork but with an S. Okay, so our space recently got raided, maybe you saw the news. I'm going to tell you, or try to answer you the question that you're now asking yourself, why did this happen? That didn't work. So what's up? The space we make a